and take the next 2 series in the group stage.
Up next, A83650 versus YuYi!
Both of these players sort of dark horses from their respective regions. YuYi, one of the most unknown players from China, and A8 out of this field of European players is probably the underdog because despite some players in the scene having seen him before and having a lot of respect for him, he really just sort of is an unknown name.
Not a ton of tournament success in the past. He took first place in the ESL Polish Championship 2018 and top 16 at both the EU Winter Preliminary and DreamHack Winter that same year. But you know, this tournament is really the breakout performance spot. This is what the Hearthstone Championship Tour is all about. Can you make a new name for yourself by having a global, international performance? That's what they're all fighting for.
Yeah, and you can see the bans here, and one of these bans stands out to me, Admirable, and that one is Cube Warlock. Miracle Rogue makes a lot of sense because A8 has that sort of controlling lineup, and a lot of his decks are vulnerable. But Cube Warlock is a deck that's struggled, and even Warlock seems to be the deck, the Warlock deck that players are tunneling in on. In the Cube Warlock we saw yesterday, especially in a world where players are bringing weapon destruction. YuYi having weapon destruction in 2 of his decks to cut off the Skull of the Minari, but yet still bans it away.
We saw it yesterday. Bunny Hopper was able to win in a series almost entirely on the ability to destroy Skull of the Minari.
Yeah, 3 wins against Very Cube Warlock. Now, YuYi's lineup is a little bit different with the Even Shaman instead of the Shadowwalk Shaman, but still a little bit questionable, especially since it feels like Miracle Rogue can prey on his lineup as well.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about this matchup and the volatility to it, but this one is looking like it might be somewhat of a blowout. Master Oakheart, I think, is certainly the centerpiece powerful card of the deck, where being able to land this card before your opponent can set up defense is often just a snowball victory. It's very difficult for your opponent to recover. And when you have Wild Growth, a second Wild Growth, a Nourish, and Master Oakheart, that's going to happen way before A8 has access to Psychic Scream mana. That, to me, is just the recipe for disaster for A8 here, and I think you're just going to see fireworks here in game number 1.
And A8, if we remember back to his initial match against Blood Trail, his 3-2 loss, Priest was the deck that was the liability. He actually went up in the series 2-1, but then lost 2 games in a row with Priest. Couldn't solidify that victory. One of those losses being to Taunt Druid. And we could take a look at some of the tech cards in his lineup. Gluttonous Ooze being one of them. Not really going to be that great of a card against YuYi's lineup. Skulking Geist, though, can be. Druid relies heavily on 1-mana spells, specifically Naturalized, to get their engine rolling with all the big taunts. And cutting that off early can be a big deal. But
the big one here, I mean, that normally is the case.
Normally is the case.
So Skulking Geist is, you know, it cuts off the ability for Naturalize in this particular matchup, and that oftentimes weakens your opponent's ability to utilize Hadronox. In this game, that doesn't look like it's going to end up being a factor to me. The big thing to me that's missing is the tech choice of a Shadow Word Death. Not having access to that means that YuYi can Nourish here for mana, and then he can Wild Growth afterwards and roll into Lich King and then Master Oakheart. Now, typically, playing a Lich King against Priest can be a little bit dangerous if they just have Shadow Word Death. They're able to snag tempo and keep the damage rolling, but that's just not a possibility for A8. And with YuYi using the Nourish and Wild Growth here, a lot of times you want to save the coin for when you Nourish and Wild Growth, you get to power out Master Oakheart with the coin afterwards. Since he drew 2 Wild Growths, that's not even really a consideration for him here. For YuYi, it's just the dream curve. I think this is absolutely one of the best possible hands he could have had.
Yeah, he even has the very consistent list with the double Dragon Hatcher. So despite drawing the first Dragon Hatcher in this opening hand here, he's still going to be able to summon one for Master Oakheart and just keep the taunt pool rolling.
Yep, still a couple draws he doesn't want to see. He doesn't want to see Sleepy Dragon, doesn't want to see the second Dragon Hatcher on the spot. Pretty much anything else in the deck, he's fine with drawing at this point.
Yeah, he does also have his Ironwood Golem, so Master Oakheart is not guaranteed to draw Hadronox, pull Hadronox onto the board. More than likely he's going to pull an Ironwood Golem, but still just such a powerful card.
Frostmourne picked up as well. I mean, it's going to be so hard for A8 to really stick pressure here and keep going. And does draw Psychic Scream, but again, you know, we're 2 turns away from seeing that.
2 turns away with the second Dragon Hatcher. Dragons get plopped back into the deck.
Yeah, so he needs to fade that one more draw.
Gonna try and draw some cards. Mass Dispel is in the list for A, but such a valuable card as we get later on in the game.
Twilight Acolyte looks like a nice pickup.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's super good. Now that allows A8 to, actually present some counterattack potential against a Dragon Hatcher or a Master Oakheart turn. Not only that, but it keeps some of his board alive.
Yeah, he could trade over the Wild Pyromancer plus the Twilight Drake, keeping the Twilight Drake at a 4/4 and eliminating the Lich King.
Actually allows him to contest Sleepy Dragon. That's a really big deal.
Yeah, because he'll have the 12 attack on the board. So not a terrible start, but being 4 mana behind, it's still quite a detriment.
Still rough.
Onward, friends, to
So the question here is, with A8 having Psychic Scream in hand, how much does he want to expend onto this board to remove it if he thinks that he's going to have to Psychic Scream almost 100% of the time next turn?
That's a really good question. In this spot, I'm looking at it and I'm wondering, where's A8's swing turn at? Because he's got to get the game back under control. It's not simply a matter of contesting the board. Right now, Dragon Hatcher's going to pull out another thing from the deck. And what that means is YuYi doesn't have to commit any more resources. He doesn't have to do anything on his following turn. He simply has the liberty to do so. And so for A8, it's about trying to mask that you don't have that Psychic Scream while at the same time not doing so little that you give up that information and then let YuYi run over you just for a turn. I mean, one turn of just pushing straight damage, I think, could still be a bad thing for A8 here.
Yeah, so A8 actually just going to take this turn to try and draw cards because he knows that his plan next turn is pretty straightforward. And play for value onto the board.
Yep. Needs to find Shadowy Brando at some point, too.
And there's Big Mama Spooter.
Look at YuYi. Whew. What? I don't know if that's concern. I mean, mentioned calmness. I don't. You're sitting on stage in your elimination match. It's, throw calmness out the window. You're not calm. It's pretty much the opposite.
Which is?
Not calm. That's how opposites work. You just have the word not in front of it.
Fair point.
Time waits for no one.
I'm not going to just Frostmourne and go. You mentioned there's no reason whatsoever.
Well, yeah, this is what I was wondering too. I was wondering if YuYi was actually going to attack the minion or just attack the base. I really like just attacking the face.
Yeah.
YuYi, I think, sniffed this out pretty well. That A8 was setting up simply for a Psychic Scream turn. Not the hardest turn to spot because it's just right in the 7 mana, and you have the Dragon Hatcher, but if he'd committed much more to this board, I think this could have been really bad news.
The one thing that I would say is the Twilight Drake being on the board and being Psychic Screamed back to the deck isn't necessarily something that you want to have happen, because with second Dragon Hatcher, you don't want to pull a 4/1 from your deck. And so I was thinking maybe kill the Twilight Drake with the Frostmourne, but again, you don't want a Twilight Drake loaded up into your Frostmourne because that's a 4/1. And that face damage is very valuable because you want to put the Priest to the test. And if they're going to spend their whole turn removing your board, you want to have that extra damage.
Is A8 just counterattacking here? I mean, this is 13, and you have Mind Blast and Holy Fire in your deck.
Yeah, but he also has Alex Straza.
But when's that going to get played? He's just rumbling.
Well, the Ironwood Golem's silent, so even without armor, that can still attack. So there's 7, 8, 9 damage on the board. Branching Pass has a chance to make that 15. If he didn't remove that O-card, he would have been dead. That's 19? 20 damage.
But I think the bigger story here is the swipe is just a massive swing to what's happening on board.
Yeah.
Could A8 afford to use that Psychic Scream? I guess is another question, too. I mean, you are just yielding initiative back over to your opponent.
And Psychic Scream is such a valuable card because I guess there wouldn't have been many taunts in the pool outside of Lich King.
That's why I want to Psychic Scream in that spot, is because there's not very many taunts in the pool.
Yeah. But if you if he thinks this game is going to go anywhere close to long.
It's not if you're hitting them for 8 and just leaving all their damage up. One of these, this game is going to end up, you know, someone's just going to die at this stage. Like, if you're going to be this aggressive, you have to expect your opponent's going to not do too much either. I mean, they've just secured 7 damage on the board. Don't have to do anything. Maybe that's sort of the idea too. You buy value from your minions, take the damage, which isn't super relevant, and follow up with Psychic Scream.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you could find yourself having a minion on board or finding an extra draw from it. A lot of weird merits to foregoing the Psychic Scream on the previous turn, but a lot of consequences as well.
I always loved the old adage of when in doubt, go face. I also like the new adage of even when not in doubt, go face. Just put your opponent to the test. As long as you account for, as A8 did, the situations in where you likely die. Like a 1 or perhaps 2 card combination that's likely for your opponent to have. And he did that, and he still put pressure on. And he put himself in a situation where if he Psychic Screamed the next turn, now all of a sudden, he's in basically the same situation, slightly lower health. Gave himself a chance to have initiative here with the Northshire player, but dealt a ton of damage to his opponent.
This also gives him a 9-mana turn on the following, and with Twilight Acolyte in hand, he now has an opportunity to actually draw Cabal Shadow Priest. And if he draws Cabal Shadow Priest, that means he gets to steal a dragon or a Hadronox or something like that gets played. If your opponent resummons Lich King in this spot, this gives him a chance to actually draw a 1 in 12 that can almost outright win him the game if that circumstance occurs. So there's that giant merit of simply getting lucky after your Psychic Scream if your opponent still has a powerful turn.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird situation, but honestly, I love the way that A8 has played this when I look at the hand out.
And A8 did rely a lot on comfort coming into the Summer Championship. He didn't go with the norm of what we saw. Instead of even Warlock, he went with Cube Warlock because he felt that he just liked the deck better. He felt like the matchups against what he thought the field would be close enough to where the comfort of bringing Cube Warlock would outweigh any other benefit. And it's the same with Control Priest. There was not many players that brought Control Priest to the event.
A big turn here of Divine Hymn. Yep. Buy you some time, draw you some cards. 10 damage in hand. You're closing that door awfully quick if you manage to draw some damage. And so now YuYi, I think, is going to have to look at his next turn and really think about armor potential here. You know, of course, the consequences of not wiping out a Dragon Hatcher are quite real as well, though.
Quickly.
Wow, over the card draw.
He just wants something to fight on the board. He doesn't have anything else to really fight. No second Psychic Scream. Primordial Drake's not going to clean up too much. He wants something to be able to attack with.
So YuYi, I don't think is dead to any combination of cards on the following turn.
No.
I'm looking at opportunities here, though. You know, I'm looking at the potential of, you know, Cube branching past for armor, and then Spellstone your own Cube. Get 2 more Sleepy Dragons, plus whatever you summon from the deck. You know, you do have to think about Psychic Scream, of course.
He did draw a lot of cards last turn. A8 only has 9 cards remaining left in his deck. So at this point, Psychic Scream's a real possibility, but if he wants to put on the absolute most pressure, and Branch Pass also just has the bonus of getting him out of range of a bunch of stuff, because he's at 15 health now,
Whoa,
so Alcatraz
this
is useless.
Plus attack to avoid Cabal Shadow Priest. I don't know if that's an intentional not attack or didn't get the attack off. I think either one of those could be real. Because that's the last dragon in the deck right now, right? It's 2 Sleepies, and Primordial Drake was the first one that rolled off.
I must consider.
He traded over the Primordial Drake on the last turn.
Yeah, so that's the last dragon left in the deck. So leaving that at 1 health doesn't really matter if your opponent has a spell here or not.
Yeah. So it looks like Primordial Drake is what A8's eyeing.
Yeah, just sticks to the board. Working on that railroad. It's the second Twilight Acolyte gone as well for A8, so I think YuYi now is, you know, the potential to just simply play Hadronox is becoming more real. But I still think he'd like to wait and see until either one of 2 things happens. He gets Skulking Geisted and doesn't have Naturalize left, or draws Naturalize.
Yeah. And there really isn't a way for A to kind of fight against that Hadronox on the board, but there's also not much that he could trade Hadronox into. It would take multiple turns for him to be able to kill that off.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about getting damage rolling.
Yeah,
is really what I'm thinking.
He could get damage rolling. He could also draw on the following turn and pick up Naturalize, where he wouldn't have mana to do both those things if you had to play Hadronox in the same turn. We've seen, I believe it's Rugal who has the Control Priest with the Mind Control.
Yeah.
To try and really forward his game plan against Tauntry, but A8 does not have that. He tops out at the Shadow Reaper Anduin Alexstrasza.
Ooh. Just Hadronox go, and you know, the problem with this Psychic Scream is just that he doesn't get anything afterwards. You know, at what point do you use this? You don't want your opponent to get a Lich King card if Hadronox is to die. You don't want your opponent to be able to Witching Hour it.
Yeah.
You know, you're putting it back into their deck and they have 17, 18 cards afterwards. It's basically right where they started.
Shadow Reaper Anduin also in the bottom 7 cards from A8.
Yeah, and honestly, that's not really that huge of a deal in the matchup. You do want to draw it, but you know, it's that minion pressure I think that really matters most for A8. Is if he's able to connect with minions, it's so bad for YuYi. He just rips Sleepy Dragon and plays it.
There's no Dragon Hatchers left for YuYi, so you're just going to have to play these big, expensive dragons.
Yeah,
now both Psychic Screams are gone, so...
I am that Alexstrasza at this point. This is, I think, one of the only opportunities that A8's going to have to even play this card. YuYi doesn't have health gain in the deck. You know, it's just an 8/8, but that's the strongest thing you can do.
Yeah.
I bring life.
Kind of a slow, wonky matchup towards the end here. YuYi might be facing a turn where I think he's got to start drawing cards with this branching path at this point, but it's just so dangerous to draw cards knowing that A8 has a very limited amount of damage in the deck.
Yeah. Another thing that's scary is YuYi knows that there's a Mass Dispel. Oh, no, Mass Dispel was used. That was the only copy. Yep. And there's no actual silence.
That's right.
Rugal, also a player that actually just brought in a natural silence in his Control Priest deck, which A8 does not have. He has the much leaner version. So YuYi doesn't have to worry about this Alexstrasza at the moment. If Mass Dispel was still a possibility, he would have to worry about taking 8 damage if he could push through the silences. But he's safe to just kind of let this Sleepy Dragon be in the way.
It's not only that, it's cranking out damage too.
Time waits for no one.
Very real clock, and suddenly that Mass Dispel usage comes with some liability. I mean, if A8 could Mass Dispel here and connect for 8, it would just be so huge. And the Shadow Reaper Anduin draw, you do not want to just blow up your own Alexstrasza. You know, a lot of these spots where A8 chose to fight for board or be more aggressive, it's starting to cost him a little bit, but you know, I don't really blame him for it. I think he had to do something at those stages of the game to not just get run over.
I must consider.
There's no real clean way to just deal with Sleepy Dragon outside of Holy Fire, but that Holy Fire, that thing really wants to be pointed at base.
Oh, yeah.
He's just going to load up as many beats as possible.
Let me change your mind.
The old Cairn with no bane. Pre-silenced Cairn.
Bringing me back.
Yeah, but here he goes. You know what? I think he's trying to get me here. Let's make 2 more Sleepy Dragons.
Yeah, and a cube that's holding 2, or well, I guess it's holding a cube, but still 2 minions that are great for fighting against Priest.
Just big things.
And I love the use of the cube. Oftentimes players will say, well, cube has to be used for Witching Hour. I have to wait till my Hadronox dies, and they use it with Witching Hour. No.
Big stuff.
Big stuff. The Hadronox brings you back big stuff. Why not just bring back the big stuff earlier?
I hate when Alex is going to bite the dust. And I think A8 has got to start cranking damage out.
Yeah, so let's count his damage over the next few turns. The Mind Blast turn is 16. Hero Power, Mind Blast, Hero Power, Mind Blast, Hero Power, 16. The Holy Fire turn is 9 damage. So over the course of 2 turns, he can deal 25 and heal for 5 within that.
He's closing quick, though, too. I mean, A8's down to 8. He's got swipe in hand. This is going to be close.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on how A8 chooses to play this next turn.
He does not have the liberty of trying to go for the 2-turn lethal setup. He has the damage, but Divine Hymn is a big pickup because that just gives him even more health to work with. Can he set up the 2-turn lethal while healing? So if he Holy Fires and Divine Hymns this turn,
14 plus 9 is 23. So,
well, the Mind Blast combo is 16 damage.
yeah, so
Just Mind Blast, and then Holy Fire would have been 25 total, but he can't go for that. He has to heal. So just the Holy Fire, dealing 7 this turn plus the 16 is 23.
So the Divine Hymn to me is a very apparent turn. And then from here, I don't know if he knows that he needs to kill something else from this spot. And honestly, if he does, I think he might just end up losing the game because he can't deliver the lethal over 2 turns.
Yeah, because if he Holy Fires now to the face, you'd be at 16, and they get Hero Power to 17 next turn. Yeah, he's just going to try and set up for the 2-turn lethal with Holy Fire.
And that kills him.
But that kills him.
Swipe in hand. So seeing that swipe meant that A8 said, you know what, I'm not going to play around second swipe. He's got 12 cards in the deck. I'm not going to win that way. YuYi, he's got the punish for it. So it goes to a 1-0 lead, and A just shakes his head.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a great way out of that, right? Because he's one-off lethal if he Divine Hymns and Holy Fires that turn. Because YuYi would have had 17, 8 would have had 16 damage first on the follow-up.
So going back to the turn with the Mass Dispel
To push damage.
base attack. Alexstrasza came down for 0 value in that game at some point. 0 battle cry value, that is. And you mentioned it. You said Alexstrasza's in his hand. If he had waited and he had Psychic Screamed a little bit differently, he would have had a little bit more life because he would have been playing defensively instead. Would have gotten the same damage out of the battle cry from Alexstrasza and maybe had a different follow-up. That's a tough game.
It's really hard to try and read that pan out as the game goes on. I said it earlier, when in doubt, go face, but you have, once you play Shadow Reap Brando, you have a finite amount of life to work with. Because outside of Divine Hymns and Holy Fires, you can't fit in heal hero powers. And YuYi was just able to put on just enough pressure each turn and put out just enough pressure to force the Psychic Screams out of A8. And at the end of the game, that Q play, solidifying that lead, and taking what ended up being a very close series. If he was 1 health lower, A8 could have set up for that 2-turn lethal.
Yeah, just wasn't in the cards in that one. But I think it's a big win for Taunt Druid. Taunt Druid, I think, has been one of the targeted decks in a lot of players' lineups. And Miracle Rogue was banned away from A8 on the other side of the board, rightfully so, because that deck can just
Yeah.
super punish it. But you really just Taunt Druid, I feel like, has been the deck that players went after in this tournament. And so anytime a player gets a win under their belt early with it, I feel very good for them in the series at that point.
Yeah, YuYi, I think, is in a great spot, but both these players ended up bringing some interesting lineups for the turn. Before we get into game number 2, let's take a listen to their thoughts on the current meta.
I wanted to build a strategy that's good against both even Warlock and Taunt Druid. So that's why I brought Miracle Rogue, Q-Block, Taunt Druid, and Control Priest. I had the biggest problem with the fourth deck. I was thinking about bringing Mage or maybe Shadow Rock Shaman, but I didn't really feel like those decks were good for my strategy and for my playstyle, so I ended up with Control Priest. I expected some more aggro decks, so that's why I wanted to play the class, the deck. I was wrong. Healing All Day and Terna are playing like whole aggro lineups, and they're the only people in the tournaments playing that strategy. I think I'm pretty unfavored against Narguden's lineup. He made a really smart choice of not bringing Warlock, and that was a really good idea, I think. I like Q-Block. I think it was a really good choice for the tournament just because of the amount of big spell mages and Shadow Rock Shamans. I think it should be pretty good. I don't know why like only 2 or 3 people brought Q-Block to this tournament, but it's fine. Like, I'm not complaining a lot.
大家好，我是来自中国的选手深海YuYi。对，之前然后也有在玩暴雪的魔兽世界，然后里面的一些游戏内容，包括团队性的一些游戏体验，都让我非常感兴趣。然后现在在打炉石传说这个卡牌类竞技性游戏，我同样非常感兴趣。炉石应该算是现在竞技游戏当中比较特殊类型的一款游戏。然后，可能我觉得更考验我们的分析能力，然后计算能力以及逻辑性。我觉得元素体系里边有一些非常强大的卡牌，然后我愿意把它们加入到我的卡组当中，像通常一样。然后去准备比赛，然后去尝试赢得胜利，然后也没有什么特殊的压力。
And welcome back, everybody, to the Summer Championship. Once again, I'm TJ, joined by That's Admirable. And it's time for game number 2 between YuYi and A83650. Currently, YuYi has that 1-0 lead, taking the Taunt Druid versus Control Priest matchup. But I'm excited for this series because both these players brought lineups that we didn't really expect from too many players. YuYi kind of brought that anti-control lineup, but with a little bit of a twist on it. And that twist, Admirable, is Even Shaman.
Yeah, Even Shaman is pretty much stacked at the top end. You know, I've seen this deck built a lot of different ways. You know, people running just enough top end, what they consider to people even trimming on it a little bit. But YuYi has gone full top end. And when I say full top end, I mean he's got both Sea Giants, he's got the Lich King, he's got Hagatha, he's got Kalamos in there alongside Alakir and Grumble World Shaker.
Grumble in the Even Shaman.
Just a bunch of big stuff.
Grumble is such an interesting choice to me in Even Shaman because the goal of Even Shaman is just to stick a bunch of stuff on the board and then overrun your opponent. They have some bursts from hand a little bit with Alec here, with Flame Tongues, with Fire Elementals, Argent Commander, which is another heavy card that he's put in the list. And Grumble kind of works against that, where you're bringing everything back into your hand. Well, but what it does do is value.
I was going to say, look, yeah, look at the plus side of it. You know, say you played Argent Commander or Fire Elemental on turn 6. Your opponent plays their stuff, and you go into your turn, you're able to trade something, then Grumble. You can replay that same thing that you just brought back
For 1 mana.
For 1 mana. So you get to play it again right away. Let's just say your opponent's just beating up all your stuff and you don't have much to do. Just turn 6, play a 7/7, and that unlocks the Kalamos for the following turn. It has that prerequisite of you need to have played an Elemental on the previous turn. I think it actually fits into this deck quite well overall.
Yeah, even Shaman has evolved a lot since sort of the first versions that we saw. We saw very value-oriented even Shamans. We saw like full aggressive even Shamans with as many charge minions and damage from hand minions as you can fit in. And then the Elemental package came around. A lot of players stuck to it. And now we're seeing the even further evolution of it with with Grumble. I like the way it's going. And I was surprised more players didn't bring it because I think even Shaman is a really versatile deck. It doesn't have too many of those very good matchups. It doesn't have those decks where it just beats up. It does have good matchups, and it's got some slightly poor matchups, but it's not polarized, very polarized of a deck. And as Soddle knows all too well, it can even play the value game with Hagatha once you go late.
Now, the one thing I will say is I do think it has one quite bad matchup. Yeah, I feel like he happens to be facing it right now.
Yeah.
This matchup is, I don't know, for whatever reason, historically, Priest has just been good against Shaman. I don't really know why or how. It just, every time I watch it, it seems like the Shaman doesn't get a lot of traction, and then at some point just ends up dying.
Well, look at the 2 main pieces of removal for Control Priest. Dustbreaker removes pretty much every early board from Shaman, maybe outside of a Corpse Taker that has a Divine Shield slapped on it. Look at Psychic Scream. Does your opponent really want to draw totems at any point in the game, which is kind of core to their game plan? The only reason why you're only playing even cost cards is to get a cheap totem every single turn. Both those cards just happen to line up incredibly well against the Shaman. And I think this is one of those games where you do have to play the value matchup. But if you do, you give them tons of time to find Shadowy Brando and play Alexstrasza and burst you in a deck that has very little heal outside of the Vicious Scalehide and Corpse Takers, if you still have a Vicious Scalehide in your deck.
Yeah, which there no longer is. 1 copy of Vicious Scalehide. So
it's gone. So
yeah.
No healing outside of Kalamos Primal Lord, and that has a pretty heavy prerequisite. And oftentimes, if you just play that on a board and heal for 12,
you're done.
You're probably done at that point. So
unless you have a big board.
That's the shining, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel for him. But it is a tough matchup, and this is what A8 was expecting coming into Summer Championship. If you heard his video piece, he said he thought a lot more players would bring aggro, and he said he was wrong. But if he manages to make it through to the next phase and wins out his group, which is a tough road for him since he's in the elimination match and has to win 2 more matches to get out of his group. If those aggro players make it to the top 8, his chances become so much better as the tournament progresses.
No question about that. Now, that is a pretty good draw, I'd say.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that YuYi can stick damage to the board is using Earth and Might. You know, talking about Dustbreaker and Psychic Stream, the 4 health mark is very critical. The Divine Shields, they're very critical. And so being able to buff out right now is a really big deal. Now, the problem with it is that he can't kill a Dustbreaker on the following turn. So the Earth and might stay in hand for just 1 more turn, maybe just totems up again. But the turn that he can play Earth and Might, keep something alive through Dustbreaker, and potentially swing the board afterwards, I think that's where YuYi is absolutely going to start pushing for heavy damage at that point.
Yeah, swinging the board afterwards, I feel like is the biggest point of that because
the Dustbreaker is going to challenge whatever's left over.
It's going to challenge whatever's left over, and then you're back at square one, and you used a resource in order to basically put yourself in the same situation that you were in.
Job done.
But he's going to go for it.
I mean, I don't mind using it here. This does force A8 to pretty much use a Dustbreaker, you know, sooner rather than later. And so the longer you can, you know, the longer you can wait as the defensive player, the more likely you are to have it. So I don't blame you for going here at all. His board is like relatively low value. If he's going to face down a turn like this at some point or another, so using less rather than more immediately is just a better thing for him.
Yeah. And we talked about A8 and how he felt his lineup was good against those fast decks. But let's hear it from his own words.
My lineup is not good against aggro decks, so if I face one, then I'm probably gonna lose. But luckily for me, in my half of the bracket, there are no aggro lineups, so I should be fine.
He said the exact opposite in his other piece.
Yeah, well, not only that, but in the interview, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to reference my notes real quick, because I'm pretty sure he told us the literal exact opposite.
In his interview, he said, oh, yeah, I'm facing aggro decks, so I made the wrong choice because there's no aggro decks. And then right there, he tells us, my lineups aren't good against aggro decks.
Maybe he changed his mind.
That's a big flaw in his lineup. What is he good against?
Yeah, that is exactly what he told us. Said he didn't feel he brought the best lineup, but he was very comfortable and confident in the group.
I have it in my notes as well.
All right. Change his mind. I think that's the most upset I've ever heard you.
I'm very upset.
I must consider.
A8's looking pretty upset. This is tough.
Would you classify Even Shaman as an aggro deck?
Yeah.
Would you classify any deck as not an aggro deck?
Ooh. Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay.
Like Taunt Druid, Cube Warlock.
I've seen you play a lot of decks. You play every deck like it's an aggro deck.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I lose a lot. As soon as I learn it, that's the key. Right when I learn where that aggro point starts. Every deck is aggro at some point. You just got to figure out where that point is. It's looking like Divine Hymn, though.
Trying to fight for the board.
I mean, with Psychic Scream in hand, it's just got to be comfortable with this. I mean,
Yeah.
you are starting to approach the turns where YuYi is just going to have, like, powerful stuff every single turn. But what you're hoping to see is that YuYi either undercommits or overcommits at a certain point. It's that fine balance where you're doing just enough that really keeps A8 on the back foot. And so, like, a turn like this one, for instance, is Flame Tongue Totem enough here to force A8 to have to do something? And I think the answer is yes, because not only do you kill the Dustbreaker in this spot, you also push 8 points of damage. And so you look at that, I really think he could just totem alongside that. Keep that threat high of being able to trade off a minion and also push damage at the same time. See, now this prompts A8 to do something, and honestly, he's quite happy about it. He took less damage, and your opponent just used a big card. So in this spot, I look at this and I think A8's much happier to Psychic Scream a turn like this than he was previously, where he's Psychic Screaming very little back to the deck.
Yeah.
And he took less damage. So I think, in my definition, this would be an undercommitment in terms of what he's actually applying for pressure, but an overcommitment in terms of the cards he has there. So this fits like both categories for Psychic Scream here, I think.
And Skulking Geist, which is kind of the play that stands out because, hey, 6 mana, card's green, you have 6 mana, play the 6 mana. But he's going to go with Twilight Drake plus Power Word Shield. Skulking Geist, of course, works against him because he still has the Power Word, or at least the 1 Power Word Shield in hand.
I'm really surprised by this Twilight Drake, because now YuYi has an opportunity to force that pressure onto A8, and if A8 wants a Psychic Scream, now he's just losing his own minion in the meantime.
Yeah.
Like, YuYi now, his most important minion just didn't die. I think this is an opportunity to get aggressive.
Or just kind of keep the status quo. His Fire Elemental is protected. He could totem up, evaluate. If it's Taunt Totem, I'm probably not playing anything and hitting him for 10.
Yeah.
Because then if he does Psychic Scream, which at that point he kind of has to, because he can't afford to take 10 again, because then he's probably dead.
Yeah.
And if he does Psychic Scream, you spent 0 resources and removed your opponent's Twilight Drake.
With a totem.
With your opponent's card.
So
with the totem.
I'm definitely toteming here first.
Yeah.
The question is just to follow up afterwards.
Yeah. And if he doesn't roll Taunt Totem, what's his play?
I do believe there's a lot of justification for Flame Tongue Totem, because that's a very similar problem for your opponent. If they kill a minion, the Flame Tongue Totem just shifts over and keeps the damage rolling. If they kill the Flame Tongue Totem, they still have 10 on board. And so this is kind of the marriage of both of those, where Saronite Chain Gang is not really a super important card in the deck. And so YuYi tries to guarantee himself this Taunt Totem, and at the same time doesn't water down his deck by using the hero power. This is, I think, a very good in-between. So like last turn, it was a little bit under.
Yeah.
And this turn, I feel like this is absolutely the right spot. Apply just enough to put your opponent in an incredibly awkward spot.
Yeah, this is kind of similar to the Tonto play we mentioned, except if he Psychic Streams without the Tonto being thrown into his deck. And of course, he forgoes the Totem up because he's expecting Psychic Stream.
Divine Hint picked up, though. That is big. That is really big. So suddenly...
That is a nearly clear board and a ton of cards.
Right. I mean, this was like the ultimate punish. And A8 got a little bit lucky to draw the right card here. But my goodness, this is a massive turn for A8. He might have just taken over this game. Just like that.
Not good against aggro decks. Give me a break.
I think his lineup is quite good versus aggressive decks.
He does have Miracle Rogue. That's like the one thing. But even his Taunt Druid is built in a way that's sort of anti-aggro.
That's like a lot of Taunt Druids.
Because he's got less top end with one Dragon Hatcher. He's got Wrath and Ferocious Howl. And he's 70. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm done.
The follow-up of Psychic Scream on this.
Or even Shadow Reaper and went into Psychic Scream.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, you're not necessarily risking dying to something like with a crazy Flame Tongue Alligator
Yeah,
turn.
you take off the 6/5 next turn.
Just do whatever you want.
Just do whatever you want. You're taking 6. Flame Totem plus Alakir would be a total of 10.
Staker does have.
He wouldn't even be able to Flame Totem plus Alakir because he's at 9 mana.
Yeah, exactly.
So he counted for everything. Well, he counted for everything, but everything is one thing.
Right. Literally Alakir Flame Tongue Totem. YuYi, I think, is got an interesting option here with the Sea Giant or the Corpse Taker. And I think I'd prefer the Corpse Taker in this spot. I think the one way he wins is by surprise damage at this point. So playing Corpse Taker, drawing Alakir, then having the double Wind Fury attack is probably the way to maybe get out of this.
Yeah.
But any way you slice it, it's slim to none for YuYi right now. So that Wild Pyromancer turn was so punishing.
There is little time. I wonder.
He's still at 30, so he's got time.
Yeah, so it looks like that he's committing to just never using the hero power again because the idea of trading is now pretty much gone. Like the value that a totem presents is very little, and I think at the very end just decides to go for it there, but there's so minuscule value to having totems at this point. It is going to boil down to if YuYi can actually find burst damage to finish A8 here.
Yeah, the reasoning here may be that he thinks if Psychic Stream's in the hand, he just loses anyway. So we might as well just totem if that's the case.
I definitely agree.
But the likelihood that after A8 has drawn 18 cards in his 30-card deck with 2 Psychic Screams and hasn't drawn one of those Psychic Screams or a Shadow Visions to find a Psychic Scream is very low.
Extremely low.
And now you're seeing the weakness of even Shaman when they run out of stuff. This is why occasionally we see Cult Master thrown into even Shaman decks to just try and get that draw engine.
Smooth sailing for A8 from here. He's basically going to kill every single thing YuYi plays, and then eventually YuYi.
Put this apple on your head.
He needs Hagatha and then some miracle draws.
He's just dead.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Hagatha could get out of this. I'm trying to think of like a chain of spells that couldn't seem to Hagatha. Just get blazing invocation every single time with like a little battle cry thing. There's nothing but glacial shards into healing and more blazing invocations until you find Shudderwalk.
I mean, it is possible. Volcanoes, healing rain, X's, burst damage, more minion generations with blazing invocation.
Oh yeah, I guess 3 lava bursts, that would be really the thing.
Yeah. But then you gotta worry about Holy Fire, and where are you getting these 3 lava bursts?
Yeah, and you have to draw Hagatha first.
Yeah. Well, without dying.
It's a matter of formalities from here, but I think the big one to look at is just the patience of A8 this game and demonstrating that you don't necessarily need to panic. You know, YuYi's burst damage is quite limited. So you are free to, I think, let the board get a little bit more out of control than you typically would. Because you can pick it up with Psychic Scream. So tied series here as A8 answers back with Priest. He's going to have Cube Warlock and Taunt Druid left to fight with. I'm sorry, Cube Warlock is banned away. He does not have Cube Warlock.
No. We expected the Miracle Rogue to be banned coming in, but it was not. He's got a little bit better matchups. I think it was kind of split between a couple different decks for him, and he just banned away the Cube Warlock.
I still don't get that.
Hey, me neither.
He's got Acidic Swamp Ooze in 2 different decks.
Yeah. There's not much. There's not many super valuable weapons in the decks. You know, maybe he was expecting more Aggro Mage for weapon construction.
Twig of the World Druid or something.
Twig of the World Druid, Malagos Druid, and then Skull Minari is the other big one. But we'll have to see. I mean, the strategy is going to pay off for him. We're going to get into game number 3 in a few moments, but in the meantime, let's take a listen to what these players have to say.
I'm 83, I'm from Poland, but I'm currently living and studying in Germany. I actually had to make a break from the university just to play Hearthstone to prepare for tournaments, but I want to come back and then study. The family was pretty skeptic, like negative from the beginning, but then I started making some real money, and that's why they started supporting me. And now they're supporting me a lot, and I really appreciate that.
Bunny Hopper has conceded. A8 is going to the Summer Championships.
I think Hearthstone was pretty easy for me from the time when I started playing it. It's an incredible feeling, of course. I think I've never felt so good in my entire Hearthstone career. It's incredible. I went to the first LAN tournament and I won this one, so I was correct. And then I started competing in more tournaments. I achieved some pretty nice results, and that's why I became competitive. I didn't know that I will get like recognized in Hearthstone. That's why I typed something totally random. Then I just went to a tournament in Poland, like 64 people. I won this tournament surprisingly, and then everybody was knowing me, and it didn't feel like really changing the nickname after that.
2017 Hearthstone World Champion!
This will be, I think, the first APAC tour stop for Season 2. I am cheering for Staz.
最大改变就是好像突然很多人都在台湾的人都认识你。
It's a bunch of smart, cool people that you want to hang out with.
Gia, you need to tell us where it's good.
Follow your nose.
The way the decks line up, I don't think he ever gets there is the thing.
That's it. That's gonna do
it.
it.
Oh my gosh.
Took a little bit of a risk.
大家好，我是来自中国的选手深海YuYi。我希望我们从中国赛区一起来的几位选手都能够取得好成绩，然后也很感谢国内关注我们比赛的朋友们，然后我们会为了成绩，然后付出自己最大的努力。 对，虽然我们4个人都是第一次登上 HCT 的舞台，但是在国内也可以说是身经百战，所以我相信我们也没有什么特别的压力，然后会发挥出正常的水平。意味着多了一个冠军，然后会有更高的挑战在后来。啊，是的，所以我会可能简单的庆祝，然后更好的准备下一次的挑战。
Welcome back, everybody, to the HCT Summer Championship. About to jump into game number 3 between A8 and YuYi. We got a pretty good crowd here in the Blizzard Arena today, I have to say.
They have to say, too.
Make some noise if you love Hearthstone.
Yeah! Hey, how come you didn't make any noise?
Now, make some noise if you love Admirable's beard.
Wow.
It's 50-50.
True Hearthstone fashion.
All right, let's get into it.
Whew. This matchup. Boy, do I love watching this one. This one can get dirty real quick.
Yeah. Nothing I like more than good old-fashioned dirty Hearthstone.
Tempo just matters so much. You know, you think about a lot of times you think about Miracle Rogue, you think about explosive gadgets and auctioneer turns or giant burst damage, but in this matchup, it's the tempo swings. It's the SI7 agents, the Vile Spine Slayers that are really going to matter for A8. And for YuYi, it sounds kind of weird to say, but a lot of his game plan is really not super important. It really matters how well A8 draws. If he draws the key cards, that's where YuYi typically finds himself in trouble.
There is some things you can do, and that's make your board annoying. If you lose your board once as the Even Shaman in this matchup, you're oftentimes going to lose unless the Rogue has literally used all of their resources to remove it.
Yeah.
Because they have ways to snowball the board. They have ways to protect their minions and push face damage. So if they just clear a board and stick a 4-4, you're done so. But the goal for YuYi is to try and like spread out his stuff, make it annoying, totem up every turn, put stuff in the way with a taunt totem. And don't make yourself too vulnerable to the big pieces of removal. Don't make yourself too vulnerable to Sap or Vile Spine Slayer. So even though it's about if A8 can find the removal and how he spaces out that removal, it is on YuYi to try and make his board the least vulnerable to that removal.
Notice the A8 sits up and he rubs his hands as he goes into his turn. He's like, all right, no taunt totem. Let me see how I can pick this apart.
Yeah, I mean, as the Rogue, you love to see the coin in your hand. End of analysis.
It's going to be so hard for him to get punished this game. There's some stuff that YuYi has to fight back. Definitely good. But I'm looking at that auctioneer, the prep, the sap, the coin, Vile Spine, backstab SI. I mean, this is like the dream hand for A8.
But it takes a lot of time to get there. That's the problem. And YuYi's just going to be playing small, low attack, annoying stuff for the whole game. And he's just going to chip away. That's what it's going to take.
So you take this slower as a result?
Well, I mean, there's not really a
this takes away the Flame Tongue turn a lot.
Yeah, it does. I think that's the big thing. He had an option to remove the Primal Fin Totem, but opts to make his board less vulnerable to just Flame Tongue Totem. Actually, it also makes his board less vulnerable to just Merc Spark Heal, because he could have traded in a 1/1, then Merc Spark Healed, and have a pretty wide board once again. It's about keeping the board small and keeping the board manageable. He's hoping in an ideal world that SI7 agent's going to be able to trade over the Primal Fin Totem next turn. YuYi has ways to prevent that. He can Merc Spark Heal, Flame Tongue Totem, trade over the Wrath of Air Totem to make 2 high priority targets on the board with both Primal Fin and Flame Tongue.
YuYi's looking stressed. I mean, at some point, look up to the sky and just like, what do I do? Like, this happened on turn 3, and your opponent still has coin in hand. This just looks tough.
Yeah. Because Serenade Chain Gang is also a reasonable play because that protects the the Primal Fin Totem as well, and you can theoretically trade the 1/1 across the SI the following turn, or use Flame Fin Totem to try and trade up into bigger stuff.
This is the one that I liked, was the Serenite Chain Gang. An A8, this is just bide time until he finds the Auctioneer turn.
Yeah. But, I mean, if he holds onto the coin this turn, then he's effectively having a turn where he does next to nothing.
I mean, holding on to the coin this turn, that's going to be... That's tough to do. This is... Vile Spine is so good.
It really is. But then he delays his Auctioneer turn by 1 turn, and he gives up a draw from Auctioneer. But that's not what it's about. Like I said, you take the board once, you're usually good to go.
Flame Tongue here is still, you know, not quite as good. Sea Giant. After your opponent just uses a Vile Spine, you know, is it time to give up maybe on this Primal Fin Totem? It's still going to make a 1/1. You can totem up here. You get to land a Sea Giant and trade over an SI7 agent. But when you think about that, you got to start worrying about sap. You know, you don't want to get yourself tempoed out. So like you said, just make the annoying turns. Every single time, annoying turn, etc., etc.
Yeah, don't make yourself vulnerable to big removals. Sure, totem up Sea Giant is the most power you can put on the board in one swing, but make the board wide, make the board annoying. These are the boards that are toughest for Rogue to remove.
Well, so I think is just going to end up taking some damage on this turn.
Oh, man.
But, my gosh, double prep with the Auctioneer. Yeah, I don't know about the attack. I think it actually results in you taking more damage overall.
Because you're going to have to take that 2 damage again next turn if you want to try and get past it. Let's look at the way that A8's Miracle Rogue is constructed. He does have 1 copy of the Shadow Step. He's got 1 SI7 agent and the double Gadgets and Auctioneer. He's got double Shiv to try and help that cycle a little bit, so it's a very clean list.
You know, I'm looking at the Primal Fin Totem not being killed in that 1 turn. And yes, A8 did play for a big tempo turn, but
he took a risk.
That Primal Fin Totem has been cranking out 1/1s the entire game now.
I've seen Primal Fin Totem just completely wreck games if left unchecked.
And that's what it's doing right now.
I can't remember what the game was, but there was someone who, it was Citizen Napa in the Asia Pacific playoffs who didn't zap a Primal Fin Totem early on.
Oh, I remember that. And then it made like.
Oh no, he didn't zap a. No, he didn't zap a totem. Never mind. It was a different game. But yeah, it was 12 1/1s. I can't remember the actual game, but it is very reasonable to expect an unchecked Primal Fin Totem to make 12 1/1s over the course of the game.
Like you said, just chip away.
This is kind of the epitome of an annoying board.
Well, get ready.
I got the best deals anywhere.
But he hasn't played Feldori Strider, so this Auctioneer is just going to be an Auctioneer at the end of the day. He's going to be able to draw a lot of cards and remove some of the board. But the big question is that enough? So he's only going to leave 3 power on the board at the end of this turn if he dagger attacks into these 1/1s. But the question is that attack worth it? Do you need that dagger charge for next turn? Is a 1/1 really going to fit his game plan? And make sure Auctioneer die on board, and I think that's the big thing about that dagger hit.
Relatively nice draw for YuYi in this spot. Let's him get the Sea Giant out and kill the Auctioneer.
But killing the Auctioneer comes at a big price, and that's removing a lot of his board and not pushing any damage. But once again, Primal Fin Totem.
I don't know if he should use that totem. Totems don't seem to be providing much right now. No Flame Tongue, no Direwolf Alpha. You have a Lich King in hand.
Just kind of clogging up the space on the board.
Yeah. I mean,
he's almost always going to have opportunities to trade in the 1/1, so I guess it's not that big of a deal.
Oh boy.
Oh man. So now the clock is on. Alec here, minimum 6 damage. Currently A8, if you were to push 2 damage, is at 11.
Cranking that Lich King out.
Oh yeah, of course. You've seen 2 Vile Spine Slayers. The worst Lich King can do is get sapped, but still, I guess Shadow Step. There's one copy of the Shadow Step. So not as likely, but he did just draw a lot of cards.
I want my Lich King card.
Wow.
This shuts off the Shadow Step potential. This actually is a really good idea here from YuYi too. To shut off the Shadow Step potential in this spot means that your opponent, the literal only way to deal with this now is second Eviscerate or with Sap. If they use second Eviscerate, their reach dwindles a lot, and if they use the Sap, Alec here has charge. This is the one that it's the worst to Sap, typically.
Yeah, again, you know, we said we like the Lich King, but you think about it, we go back to the game plan that we were talking about. Make your board annoying. Yeah. Chip away. By playing Alec here with both Vilespine Slayers gone, he realized the only way for A to deal with it is Sap or second Eviscerate, and he knows that those are either unlikely in the case of Eviscerate or not that great in the case of Sap.
Cold Blood does answer it too,
I suppose.
But you know, it's kind of the similar effect. It makes your opponent's damage dwindle down over time. Much weaker in this spot. I believe it's got Divine Shield. Taunt. Because of the Serenade Chain Gang.
Yeah, Argent Commander gives it the Divine Shield, and the Serenade Chain Gang gives it Taunt. But this is an opportunity for A to clean up the board.
Every time a spider happens, I get a little bit nervous. That's one of the big things that A needs to start happening now too. At 10 life, he doesn't really have a lot of time to work with. But he's got the necessary defense, you know. And now, again, I'm looking at those 2 little totems on board. They've been clogging up the board for 1/1s.
There once was a man from Hades.
And haven't been getting that much value, to be honest.
So A8's got to start thinking about the big stuff now. Argent Commander, the Lich King card draws, Kalamos. The damage that YuYi can actually apply to the deck.
And this is a big thought here because A8, even though he needs to clear out this board, he also needs to think about what it means to push damage, because not only do you have to survive and clear the board, but you also have to win the game at some point or another.
Now, Hedgeclan Thug will do that quite quick. He grows a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
But Hagatha picked up.
Oh, wow.
That feels like a really big draw for YuYi right now.
He has 0 initiative, though, is the thing, if he does that. Because he'll have nothing on the board. Absolutely nothing.
That's almost always what you trade away with Hagatha, though, right? You're trading initiative for value.
True.
So the spot that he's in, I don't think is comfortable playing the Hagatha, but I definitely don't think he's comfortable playing Lich King or the Corpse Taker.
Yeah. But he can obliterate, so he's just going to be left with the 4-1 on the board.
Another Hedgeclan.
I got the best deals anywhere.
Oh, Cold Blood. And a Spider. And a Sap to deal with Lich King if it comes back down.
Leroy.
Now YuYi's on the clock.
Oh my goodness, YuYi might just be dead.
This is it should be a 2-turn lethal setup.
I mean, Leroy Shadow Step
16 to 17 on board. Yeah.
Wow, needs something big from Hagatha here. Has to be a Hagatha card.
Winter is
Play the cheapest one first, try and have the most options to play spell. Healing Rain, but
it's only +6.
And he still has enough mana to Leroy Shadow Step plus that. Yeah, and that's game.
Wow, A8. He turned that around awfully quick.
1 board clear, that's all it took. And I honestly do like the way YuYi played it. I don't think there was any glaring things that he could have done differently that might have changed the outcome of this game. A8 just got there in the end, and Miracle Rogue taking a win over a matchup that can flood the board and overrun them pretty early on. That's a big deal for A8. He moves up to a 2-1 lead in the series.
Miracle Rogue, I think, is often expected to be very favored versus YuYi lineups. This is one of those wins that you kind of account for taking when you roll into this lineup.
But he did it against probably the toughest deck to do so in the lineup.
I would say so.
You look at what YuYi has with Miracle Rogue being banned away. He's got even Warlock, Taunt Druid, which are two pretty good matchups for Miracle Rogue, and then the Even Shaman. So even though it's likely to get a win, he did it against the toughest deck.
Yeah.
So that's always got to feel good. And for YuYi, being down 2-1 in an elimination game and losing what he probably thought was a good matchup going in, that's a real big morale blow. And pressure's got to be on for him.
No doubt about it. It's tough for me to still, look past that game and be like, oh, well, maybe you could have squeezed out a little bit extra damage somewhere. Like, did the extra 1-runs really matter? Did the second Primal Fin, was that necessary? It's just like little tiny things that make such a big difference in those games. Even with being able for A8 to save the coin for that long, like, is there any way you can get more aggressive and force your opponent to have to make some more awkward plays?
Yeah, but man, I do not envy YuYi right now being in this spot with a lot of pressure on the line. A8 currently 1 game away from securing his spot, at least in the decider match, to try and fight it once again for a spot in the quarterfinals. We're going to get into game number 4 in a few moments, but in the meantime, let's go have some whimsical fun with the developers.
With the developers.
Draw your favorite character in 90 seconds.
Okay. Little known fact, most art in Hearthstone takes more than 30 seconds.
Let's start with the background here. Let's get a nice blue sky in the background. And then let's do some orange, because we're gonna make a mana worm. And I love mana worms as creatures.
As you may or may not know, I do like Murlocs. And I was thinking about, what are Murlocs missing? And the answer is pets, like a Murloc pet, right? I drew a Murloc cat. Murloc.
This is just gonna look like a bunch of fruit for a while, and that's fine. You look at any of the masters, they draw fruit, always. This is a bird spell. It casts birds. Not threatening birds, not even a little bit. It just throws tiny birds.
All right, time's up. Does one bird have a smaller bird on his head?
Yes.
That sort of ethereal, pure magic being. And that is a perfect, could go in the game tomorrow rendition of a mana worm.
How do you feel that went?
As awful as expected.
You know what? I don't even need your 10 seconds. Here's the bird of failure. This is what I did with my time. Get out of here.
On this week's episode of Talkstone. Now it's time for the well-played moment, where we talk about our favorite plays.
Our well-played moment has to be from HCT Soul just a few weeks back. Taunt Druid versus Shadowwalk Shaman.
Cinderlaw goes with a 2/4 Acolyte opinion that he had just drawn thanks to Prince Keleseth earlier on. Saiyan recognizes this, and he's like, well, I'm not really aggroing him down. He's drawn so many cards. I just got to go for it here. And so he swipes, and he naturalizes, and he puts more damage in the Acolyte, and everything seems to be going well. The pieces are getting burned.
It was burned.
I'm like, these are important cards. These are very important cards. But I was like, everything still works. And then all of a sudden, well played. Boom! Shutterwalk just blows up. And Cinderlaw, you can see it in his face. It's like rage and fury. Like Cinderlaw, he's like, I'm done. I can't win. It's over. Just concedes. And it's like, it's just insane to watch.
Kind of the perfect way to cap off that intense series with Cinderlaw burning the Shadowwalk.
Game 5.
Oh. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Summer Championship. There you can see the official hashtag for the Summer Championship. Look at it in all its glory. Hashtag HCT Summer. I'm gonna expand that hashtag.
Uh-oh.
After the hashtag. Don't expand the actual hashtag, but HCT Summer, and then have another hashtag that's HCT Summer Snack Time with TJ, and then also tell me your favorite snack while watching Hearthstone.
HCT hashtag summer and snack time with TJ, and also tell me your favorite snack. Also?
Yes.
Sure. Something like that. That's a very long, that's like the entire tweet. All right. Whatever you say.
Thank you. That's admirable.
I'll go out there and do it.
For always believing in me.
We have turned
despite all the dumb things that I say. Let's get into this game. It's going to be Taunt Druid for A8 versus the Even Challenge once again for YuYi, which is struggling, I have to say.
It is struggling. Is this a struggle matchup? I feel like this Earth and Might is going to start beating A8 up. I feel like the Flame Tongue's going to start beating him up. I feel like YuYi's looking pretty good this game.
I feel like the Hex is going to beat him up. The one thing, though, YuYi only has included one copy of Hex in his Even Challenge.
Which I don't mind. I think Hex is kind of a clunky card in the deck.
It is, but against Taunt Druid, it's very necessary because Hex just does so many things. One, it just removes a big minion from the board. Two, it adds a beast to the pool, so Witching Hour becomes much less reliable. Three, it adds a 0-1 frog taunt to the taunt pool of Hadronox.
Those are bad things to happen.
Those are bad things to happen if you're the Taunt Druid. Hex is a great card in this matchup. And so having one is a slight detriment. And A8 does have a more aggressively teched Taunt Druid with less top end, with only one Dragon Hatcher, and Wrath and Ferocious Howl included in the deck to give him a little bit more cycle early on, a little bit more health gain, a little bit more removal for must-kill threats. One of the other things that he does have is a Trog Gloom Eater, which is the 1 attack, 5 health taunt minion that has Poisonous, that gets summoned by Master Oakard as the 1 attack minion in his parade of the various attacked minions.
Such a beautiful way to put it. YuYi is pretty much just off to the races here, though. A8 is missing the both early ramp with Wild Growth, missing Oaken Summons, doesn't have Swipe right now.
No access to Spreading Plague either from the Taunt Druid, because that just works completely against the deck, their beasts, their taunts.
The only question mark I have for YuYi last turn was Earth and Might or Flame Tongue Totem. I'm not sure how it affects the clock, but Flame Tongue Totem did look a little bit better to me.
If you're playing the long game, I suppose that Earth and Might the Triumphant Totem to make him less vulnerable to swipe and have additional 1/1s each turn.
If your opponent's naturalizing that in YuYi's spot right now, he's going, this is either really good or really bad, and honestly, it's probably just really good.
And he kills off the 2/1. That makes him take more immediate damage, but even kind of the same damage over time, because he takes 1 more damage. But he's going to take additional damage from the Direwolf Alpha for the course of a few turns. I guess at the end it works out to be exactly the same.
Yeah, it's either exactly the same or it's less damage, because it's going to get a repetitive attacks and stuff like that.
Well, Oaken Summons can try and thin his deck, so he's more likely to draw that ramp.
This was the Nourish turn, though.
But this was the Nourish turn. If he Nourishes, he's not doing anything but hero power, and he's taking a lot of pressure. But Nourish does allow him to roll into Primordial Drake, which could help clean up the board.
Yeah, and so he should. I think that A8 should be attacking the
2/3,
the 2/3 Saronite Chain Gang. There's a chance that you don't, because if you see something like Healing Totem roll off, you just take 2 extra damage because of that. But I think protecting the Primordial Drake is quite a priority here, and without attacking this 2/3, what that means is Flame Tongue's going to be able to roll over your Primordial Drake. Now, at that point, A8 just may feel like he's so far ahead that that's not really a concern. But I'm attacking it.
It also telegraphs the Primordial Drake very heavily, so it gives YuYi kind of that, well, I need to try and make sure I play around the Primordial Drake as much as possible. Earth and Might, Flame Tongue. Ooh.
Yeah, this is a lot of damage. the Flame Tongue Totem placement here is actually quite important as well. It should be between the Direwolf and the Star Knight Chain Gang if he's going to play it. I guess if he's expecting Primordial Drake, this is the right spot for it, because then he gets to trade in the 5-power Star Knight Chain Gang, and then use the Fire Elemental here. Yeah, this is correct.
Well, the Star Knight Chain Gang would have been 5 damage on the other side as well. So I do think I would have liked it in the other spot. But in the end, if he's expecting Primordial Drake, it really just doesn't matter.
Oh my. I think it's too much for A8 to handle.
He's just dead.
Yeah. Wow.
Too much for him to handle.
I forgot about the slide over to the Flame Tongue Totem.
Yeah.
I just forgot about that. Yeah, it's that map against Druid. If you think about what historically it's struggled to, it's wide positions that also have buffs attached to them.
Yeah.
And since there's no way for A8 to actually punish a wide position outside of swipes, Earthen Mites and Flame Tongue Totems become some of your premier cards in the matchup, and those were the big factors that really made the difference for YuYi in that one.
Even Direwolf Alpha just gives you that extra damage on some of your minions, as we can see, being kind of the MVP there. It lived on the board for since, what, turn 2, turn 3?
Yeah.
It was able to get that Earthen Mite, so I love the way that YuYi spotted that. I don't know, maybe it's just really tough from that spot from A8. It's so hard to deviate from the original game plan. Like, maybe even just playing Trog Gloomeater is better than Nurse. It's very hard to say, but I think he had to go in for that Primordial Drake. It just, at the end of the day, ends up being a bad matchup.
Yeah.
Even Shaman just gets on the board too quickly. They have Hex to push through and interrupt your game plan. Very tough road.
It's all about the buffs. You just don't have sufficient ways to answer the buffs without drawing the picture-perfect removal across the way. We need to use Naturalize in that game. It just gave YuYi extra gas.
Yeah.
It's just a really bad matchup.
But, Admiral, you know what that means. We have a game number 5 coming up. YuYi versus A8. One of these players is going to be eliminated, and the other one has to move on to the decider match and fight yet again for that quarterfinal spot.
That's stress I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
That's tough. You worked for months to get to this point, made it through the playoff stage, where you're fighting against some of the region's best to earn this championship spot. You come here, don't make it out of groups, still walk away with some cash in your pocket, but
yeah.
Every single player in the interview, constantly throughout it was top 4 is my goal, top 4 is my goal, top 4 is my goal. Every single player here wants to make it to the World Championship.
Yeah. It's big. All right, well, as we get ready to jump into game number 5, how you guys feeling in the crowd? First game number 5 of the day. Let's make some noise.
Well met.
Well met. Well met to you, good sir, with the sign. Somebody high-five that guy. There we go. I heard it. So it's all going to come down to, on A8 side, the Taunt Druid once again.
For YuYi, did we see it in play yet? The Warlock?
No. Well, we saw it, but here we go. Taunt Druid versus even Warlock. These two decks kind of are the identity of the Summer Championship.
They really are.
They're the two most popular archetypes brought to the event, and every deck is either built around it or built to counter it, nearly.
Exactly. I wanted to talk about built to counter it is really the point there. You know, even Warlock has somewhat struggled in the tournament. Coming into day 2, I'm sorry, into day 3 here, it had a 10-11 game score. So just under 50%, and Taunt Druid was at 6-10 coming into day 3 here. 6-10 game score. Those are not good game scores.
Yeah.
We're in game 5 now, the pivotal match where both decks have struggled on each side.
I just realized, Admiral, I think I lied to these good people. It's the second game 5 of the day. Isn't it? Yeah, it is. I'm so sorry. Second game 5 of the day. Woo! Okay, we reenacted the moment. That's a lot of threats.
Yeah, Mountain Giant's a really important
That's almost
one.
the entire threat top end. With Mountain Giant, double Twilight Drake, double Dread Infernal, and the Lich King.
Are you a fan of the tap Mountain Giant play here? Because this is how you get punished with Naturalize. Do you want to get punished by Naturalize? This is how it happens.
All right, let's see. He's going to overdraw 2 cards, Spellstone and Spellstone. Okay.
Yeah, YuYi, I mean, that really slows down the game plan. When you get your initial stuff blown up, that's really where A8 starts to see, I think, his big power spikes. You're able to handle Mountain Giant, have a lot of ramp, and then big stuff to follow it up. Left for A8 is to build a taunt pool. And if that's the case, what that means is YuYi has to get a lot of pressure on board right away. And that may have been the reason the tap is just, you know, you're trying to get your life total lower so that you have access to Hooked Reaver. I don't mind it. You know, I'm a big fan of getting the Hooked Reaver online as quickly as possible, even if that does mean intentionally burning cards from your deck sometimes.
Or just hoping your opponent doesn't have Naturalize, but that hope is gone. But now if he plays Twilight Drake, he's in the exact same position. He moused over the Acidic Swampers at first, so my initial thought was that he was going to just play 2 cards.
The problem with that, of course, is Primordial Drake.
Yeah.
Yep, and YuYi is going directly into the Hooked Reaver game plan. He wants to sink himself to 15 life as quickly as possible so that that is upgraded to a 7/7.
Wow, and taps to 10, so he doesn't care about the next card.
Right.
He wants to get that health total low.
I mean, that's the thing, though, is the key cards in the deck, he's already drawn one of them with Mountain Giant, he's drawn 2 more with Twilight Drake, and then now he's drawn a Hooked Reaver. So if this push is not good enough to win the game, it likely means that YuYi does not have a push that will win the game.
So realize with everything in his hand, they basically just needed the Hook Reaver to have those life taps pay off. But second Naturalize, this is going to burn 3 cards because he's at 10. Sun Fury Protector, again Greymane, and he's going to burn 1 additional card on the draw on the next turn. None of the cards so far have been ones that I think are terribly impactful.
Well, I saw that one on the corner of the screen there. Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah.
But the game plan, I mean, at this point, it's full speed ahead for YuYi. I mean, this turn is probably 2 minions or a Dread Infernal. Get to the 15 mark, hope that Hooked Reaver can deliver damage. But from here, it's looking real bad. Double Naturalize on your first 2 major threats is a disaster for YuYi's Even Warlock.
But now AA doesn't have Naturalize to like kill off his own Hadronox, but I mean, he's got a lot of cards out of the way for YuYi. He survived that early damage. And now he's going to start pulling big minions out of his deck. And he's going to be the one on the offensive.
Yeah, this is problem for YuYi. Mind you, no Spellstones in the deck either, so he doesn't have a way to deliver like one of those giant punches to a minion.
Yeah.
And YuYi's version of Even Warlock is a bit against the grain from what we've seen in the tournament. There's no copy of the Black Knight in his Even Warlock either. So he's got to fight fair against these Sleepy Dragons.
You really just have a board full of dragons. And there's no Spellstones, and that's kind of like the biggest pieces of removal from YuYi's side to try and fight through.
Oh, yeah.
His Spellstones, because those would be pretty upgraded right now, especially with Vulgar Homunculus being played and Dread Infernal able to activate it as well with the 1 damage to face. I mean, he's just got to play minions and hope that he has enough to push through, but A8's also playing minions that are just as big.
Yeah, I'm looking at A8's side here, and I'm thinking that, you know, it feels maybe a little bit weird, but Hadronox is a totally reasonable play on this board.
Yeah.
You have the board already. He's not getting a second Sleepy Dragon out of the deck is the thing. He's only got 1 copy, and he's got both Primordial Drakes in his hand. So he doesn't have the reliance of having a big backup dragon take place. And so, because he knows Hadronox is, for the most part, protected, there's no Transform effect in YuYi's deck, of course, and there's not really a huge way to punish it. He just needs a bigger taunt pool for that to happen. Blood Reaver Gul'dan drawn. But YuYi's just facing a lot of damage. Knows there's no Naturalize, so maybe Lich King is just the best course of action here. Try to get more demons out and hope that Blood Reaver Gul'dan can carry this one, but with A8 just free to develop pretty much without fear, I think this is going to get ugly.
Yeah, Doom Pack picked up as a Lich King card. could find use, but oftentimes if all your threats get removed and you're behind as even Warlock, it's going to be very tough for you unless you stuck a ton of early damage to win the game.
What to do?
Plus the Spellstone. Wipes up Lich King.
And just puts another large dragon on.
Is there a reason to trade off the Primordial rather than the Sleepy Dragon here? Doesn't have any healing effects to his deck. It just adds a bigger taunt to your death pool, right? Chew, baby?
YuYi is going to have to kill off the other Sleepy Dragon to win the game anyway. It's going to die.
This is just... Everything looks kind of bad.
Yeah,
you just don't have a way to protect yourself, really. I mean, this might have to be like a Doom Pack turn or something crazy.
At the very least, like a Shroom Brewer to try and heal himself, because at the moment, he's got a swipe in hand.
I'm not tanking 8 more damage from this. I really don't want to.
Doom Pact and Shroom Brewer to put someone on the board. He needs initiative.
He's got the most important card in his deck with Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Spellbreaker, you hate to see it go, but
got a second one.
You're relying on Blood Reaver Gul'dan to do the heavy lifting at this point. I think he's just got to go in.
So he's got a 4/4 Hooked Reaver and 1 Vulgar Homunculus in the pool, I believe, as his 2 demons. Still think there's a Hooked Reaver left in the deck. None were burned, and he's only played 1.
This is kind of an interesting turn here for YuYi now as well. He can get a lot of development online with the Dread Infernal plus the Bladed Beetle and the Sunfear Protector, and actually start manipulating the attacks from the Hadronox so that it's attacking weaker things. Now, the problem with that, of course, runs into if A8 has Cube, I mean, you're pretty much going to be donezo. So you want to apply the quickest clock possible, but you also want to be able to fight back if your opponent activates Hadronox. But that just may be such an impossibility that he feels like he wants to get the clock done just quicker rather than later. So Blood Reaver Gul'dan, start going face. Maybe use the Sun Fury Protector afterwards to keep trying to manipulate those Hadronox attacks to maximize the time it takes for that to kill itself.
Yeah, but if you don't think your opponent has cubes, silencing the Hadronox with both Naturalize is gone. Even if you give an opportunity for it to kill itself, just a Witching Arrow that resummons a Hadronox that's not going to get killed is a big deal.
I like saving the Spellbreaker. I really do.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Huge draw for 8/8. This is the maximum punish to not killing Hadronox. I like the risk that YuYi took. I think that's his chance to win, but I think that just went out the window.
Yeah. I don't think there's a single way that YuYi can get through this wall of taunts, plus a cube that he can now silence, but this is a lot of damage pouring at his face. I don't think he can even survive the next turn. $16 damage on board.
My hunger.
You can definitely survive. The problem is like being able to
19 with Ironwood Golem.
It's answering the two-pronged attack from the cube side. Like, where does he actually win, even if he does manage to get this board state under control? That's really the issue.
Yeah.
Your magic shall not
so Spellbreaker almost has to come down and just has to try and survive. The taunts and the hero power heal will be enough. There was 24 damage on the other side with branching paths, but it won't be able to push through with taunts. And now in order to activate that Spellstone, he would also have to use branching paths as armor to try and push through.
It's this Spellstone and then hero power attack. But you know, he gains enough health here, but he just doesn't make progress on the board.
Yeah.
That's really the issue.
I wonder.
He risked the cube coming off the top. I think that was the right call. Sometimes you just gotta lose.
It's putting him at 7.
That'll do. YuYi concedes the game, A8. In a fairly long 5-game set, is still alive in the event. One more match to make it out of groups as YuYi is eliminated from the tournament.
A bold meta call made by both players with interesting lineups that are very unique. And A8 with the Control Priest and the Cube Warlock lineup lives to see another match. His day's not over though. He's got to fight again later in the decider for his group. And that matchup's going to be a rematch against Blood Trail, who defeated A8 on Thursday with a very close series.
Yep. Double jeopardy it is. But maybe he can get revenge too.
All right, well, let's send it over to the stage with Cora, who's standing by with an interview.
I'm joined by A83650, the winner of our second match of the day. YuYi has been eliminated from the tournament, but A8 lives on to fight another round. Congratulations, first off. Going into that matchup, obviously you had a bit of a rougher day on Thursday, but this time around you did end up walking away with the win. How were you feeling going into this one?
I actually felt pretty good. My lineup was like really favored against him. I needed to adjust my strategy though because I thought that my rogue will be banned and not my Q block. But yeah, it went pretty well for me, as expected.
Well, I do really want to touch on one specific aspect of your lineup. Obviously, the Q block is a little bit unusual, but the Priest in particular. You'd mentioned when we talked to you earlier in the week that Priest was a bit of a comfort pick for you. It was a deck that you knew you could pilot very well. What specifically was the reason, though, that you brought it in your lineup? Did you think it would have good matchups in this meta, or did you just really want to play it?
So I actually considered 3 decks as my 4th pick, Shadowwalk Shaman, Big Spell Mage, and Control Priest. And as I said, I felt the most comfortable with Priest, so that's why I brought it.
Hey, I love it. Sometimes you just got to play what feels good, and this time it got you the win. A couple of really, really tough matchups there, but it pulled through. But looking towards the end of the day today, you are going to be having a rematch against Blood Trail. He did get the win last time. Do you think you can beat him this time around?
Of course, I hope I will beat him. Some unfortunate things happened 2 days ago. I hope today it's going to be better.
That's all that you can really do. Play your best and hope that this time things go your way, but they certainly went your way this time around. Congratulations, A8. Let's hear it for A83650. He's moving on to the decider match of Group B, but let's go ahead and get to our next elimination match. It is going to be Group C.
Thanks very much.